I mean, come on, David. You were never my first choice. You were my safe or maybe second choice. That was it. That one stupid, reckless sentence, spat out in the heat of an argument about something I can't even remember, burned my entire life to the ground. And now here I am, sitting at the kitchen table, staring at the divorce papers like they're written in some foreign language. My hands are shaking, and it's not because of the cold coffee in front of me. David's gone. He packed a bag, grabbed his laptop, and walked out the front door 2 days ago. I thought he'd be back by now. I really did. He always comes back, except this time, he didn't. The house feels dead without him. Even our daughter Julia may one day ask me, "Where is Daddy?" I don't even know if I can explain the complexity of the situation to a child of 5 years old. But it's not just what I said. It's what he found out. David knows now. He knows everything. I don't know how, but he does. I can't even imagine the look on his face when it all clicked. The late nights, the whispered phone calls, the distance I thought I could hide behind sarcastic comments and forced smiles. I didn't think he had it in him to leave. I thought he'd stay, like he always did, like he was supposed to. I guess I underestimated him. Now I'm left with nothing but these papers, this silence, and the weight of everything I did. I want to tell myself he'll forgive me, but deep down, I know better. The damage is done. You're probably wondering how it got to this point. Trust me, so am I. Maybe if I start at the beginning, I can figure it out. Or maybe it'll just make me hate myself even more. Either way, let's rewind. I'm 30 now. David's 33. We met 6 years ago, got married within a year, and had Julia not long after. On paper, it sounds like a sweet, simple love story, the kind you'd see in a Hallmark movie. But real life isn't some damn movie. Before David, my life was messy, to put it nicely. I had a thing for bad boys, the kind your mom warns you about and your friends roll their eyes at, the ones with tattoos, fast cars, and tempers to match. I chased the thrill, the drama, the chaos. And, yeah, I got exactly what I asked for. I found myself in fights I didn't start, in relationships I couldn't fix, and in situations I was lucky to crawl out of. Then one day, my mom sat me down, looked me dead in the eye, and said, "Rita, you can't keep living like this. You're gonna end up alone, or worse." It pissed me off at the time, but I couldn't shake her words. She was right. I was going nowhere fast. I needed to grow up, get my act together, and stop chasing men who treated me like an afterthought. And then, like some cosmic joke, David appeared. He was the opposite of every guy I'd ever been with. He didn't have tattoos or anger issues. He wasn't flashy or cocky. He was calm, steady, reliable. He had a good job, a clear plan for his life, and, most importantly, he looked at me like I was worth something, like I mattered. I'll admit it, I wasn't head over heels in love with him, but he was serious about me, about us, about building a future. After years of chasing chaos, stability sounded refreshing. The first year were good. We laughed a lot. We talked about dreams and plans, about the kind of life we wanted for Julia. And then Julia was born, and everything changed. Suddenly, I wasn't just Rita anymore. I was mom and wife, and those roles felt like they came with chains. Diapers, bottles, sleepless nights, endless laundry, grocery lists, and a house that always needed cleaning. I couldn't breathe. David was happy. He thrived in the routine, in the life we'd built. But me? I felt trapped. I missed the rush of my old life, the freedom, the recklessness. I missed feeling alive. I loved Julia, of course, but I couldn't help thinking, is this it? Is this all there is? David tried. I'll give him that. He helped with Julia whenever he could, but his job kept him busy. He'd leave early, come home late, and I'd get his help for a couple of hours before he'd crash on the couch or drag himself to bed. It wasn't his fault, I know that now, but back then it felt like I was carrying everything alone. I told myself it was just a phase, that once Julia got a little older, it would get easier, and it did, eventually. Once she started sleeping through the night and wasn't so clingy, I could breathe again. I even managed to find a part-time job. Not because we needed the money, David was making enough, but because I needed an escape. A reason to get out of the house, to feel like I was more than just a mom and a wife. My mom helped out with Julia, and for that, I was grateful. But even as life settled into a more manageable rhythm, this nagging feeling wouldn't go away. Was this really what adulthood was supposed to be? Was this it? Wake up, work, cook, clean, parent, sleep, repeat. Where was the excitement, the passion, the life? And then there was David. He didn't change. He was the same hard-working, dependable man I'd married, but I started seeing him differently, not as my partner or my lover, but as just a person I lived with. The idea of being close to him in any way started to feel more like a chore than something I wanted. I didn't know how to tell him that, so I didn't. Instead, I got annoyed with him. Everything he did or didn't do grated on my nerves. I hated how much he worked, even though I knew it was for us. We fought about it constantly. He'd try to explain, "Rita, I'm doing this so we can have a better life. It won't always be this way." But I wasn't hearing it. I wanted something impossible. "I want you to make $1 million and only work 2 hours a day," I'd snap. "I want you to spend all your time with me and Julia." He'd laugh it off, try to lighten the mood. "Me too, babe. That's why I'm working on it." But I didn't laugh. I couldn't. We kept going, though, living, fighting, pretending. I went through the motions, playing the role of a good wife when I could muster it. But most of the time, I felt like a robot, doing what needed to be done while something inside me slowly died. Then, a year ago, I got a new job. Full-time this time. It was different. More people my age, a mix of single women and unmarried men who didn't have kids or mortgages or any of the weight I carried. And oh, how I envied them. They had freedom. They had lives that still had color in them, while mine was all gray. They could go out after work, travel on a whim, do whatever they wanted without thinking twice. And me? I was stuck. Or at least, that's how it felt. That job changed everything. For a whole year, I worked there, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I had people around me who didn't see me as David's wife or Julia's mom. They saw me as just Rita. I made friends quickly, co-workers who were fun, carefree, and always up for something after work. Drinks at a bar, a concert downtown, or even just a happy hour that stretched into midnight. It was exhilarating, like I'd been handed a slice of my old life back, the one I thought I'd buried when I married David. And the craziest part? David didn't stop me. He didn't complain or guilt-trip me. If anything, he encouraged me. "Go," he'd say, smiling as he cleaned up Julia's dinner plate or tucked her into bed. "Have fun, you deserve it." At the time, I thought he was just being passive, like he didn't care what I did. But now, looking back, I think he knew. I think he felt the restlessness in me and was trying to give me a little of that freedom I craved. I didn't appreciate it then, of course. I didn't see how generous he was being, how much he was doing at home to pick up the slack while I was out reliving my 20s. No, I didn't see any of that. All I saw was this shiny, new version of myself, the one who laughed with her co-workers, clinked glasses, and felt a spark of excitement she hadn't felt in years. And then there was Sam. Sammy, as everyone called him, worked in marketing. He was loud, charming, and just a little too confident for his own good. He had this way of making every conversation feel like it was just between the two of you, even in a room full of people. At first, it was harmless. A compliment here, a joke there. I didn't think much of it. I mean, I was married, I had a family, but there was something about the way he looked at me, like I was someone worth noticing. It started small, a quick text about a project, a lingering glance at the coffee machine, a laugh that lasted just a second too long. Nothing crossed the line, not yet. But those moments, they made me feel alive. For the first time in years, I felt seen. and I didn't want to admit it then, but that feeling was intoxicating. It was the first step, the first crack in the dam, the first drop in what would soon become a flood. Things were changing for David too. He got a promotion at work, a big one. It meant he'd have a stretch of free days in the middle of the month, and he used those days to try and make life special. Sometimes he'd surprise me with a date night, reservations at a restaurant, or tickets to a movie he thought I'd like. Other times, he'd focus on Julia, taking her to the park or sitting with her for hours, helping her draw little stick figures or build forts out of pillows. But me? I was already too far gone. I didn't turn him down outright, but I rarely gave him the reaction he was hoping for. "Oh, that's nice," I'd say when he showed me some thought-out plan. Then I'd come up with an excuse. Work was tiring. I wasn't feeling up to it. Julia might need me later. The truth was, my mind wasn't even there. It was at work. It was with Sam. Sammy had this way about him that reminded me of my old flames, dangerous and electric, but with none of the messiness. He wasn't a bad boy, not really. He had a steady job, decent manners, and an easy confidence that made everyone gravitate toward him. But he had that edge, that spark of audacity, that made my heart beat faster whenever he was around. At first, I told myself it was nothing, just harmless fun. He made me laugh. He made me feel noticed. But then the friendly conversations started lingering. The jokes turned into compliments, and the compliments turned into something heavier. A joke about grabbing lunch became, "I like talking to you, you know?" A passing smile turned into a glance that lasted a second too long. I started comparing him to David in my head. David was steady, predictable, always there when I needed him. Sam, on the other hand, was exciting, unpredictable, and made me feel like the version of myself I thought I'd lost. That's when the thought hit me. David was never my first choice, was he? The idea haunted me. I'd sit in meetings or lay awake at night, imagining a version of my life where I'd never married David, where I'd chosen someone like Sam instead. Would I have been happier? Would I have had the life I used to dream about? Those thoughts seeped into everything, poisoning my perspective at home. David and I started having more arguments, not big blowouts, just little spats that chipped away at us, piece by piece. He'd ask why I seemed distant, and I'd snap back with some sarcastic jab about him being too busy at work to notice. Sometimes I managed to bite my tongue, but other times, I'd lash out. My complaints didn't even make sense half the time. "Why don't you try harder to make life interesting?" I'd say, even though he was trying. "Why are you always so calm? Can't you just get mad for once?" And that was the thing. David didn't get mad. He never yelled or slammed doors or gave me the satisfaction of a dramatic fight. He stayed patient, calm, and kind, no matter how much venom I threw at him. Sometimes I wanted him to snap, to yell at me, to slam his fist on the table and tell me to get my act together. But he didn't. He just looked at me with those soft, steady eyes, and it made me hate him even more. Not because he was doing anything wrong, but because he wasn't giving me the chaos I was secretly craving. Chaos, intrigue, drama. I craved it like an addict craves their next fix. It didn't matter how stable or good my life was. It wasn't enough. I needed the mess, the danger, the rush of doing something I shouldn't. That's what led me down the path to Sam. At first, it was harmless, or at least I convinced myself it was. We started texting outside of work, just casual stuff. Then the casual turned into flirty, and the flirty turned into something more. Sam had this way of pulling me in, making me feel like the most interesting person in the room, even if that room was just our chat screen. Then came the birthday party. Our boss threw this fancy little soiree at a swanky venue downtown, one of those places where the drinks are overpriced and everyone pretends they're fancier than they are. The party itself was tame, classy even. Everyone was laughing, toasting to another year of success, and I was no different. I played the role of the fun, friendly coworker, clinking glasses and dancing with the girls from the office. But the whole night, My eyes kept drifting to Sam, and his kept finding me. By the time the party started winding down, most people were calling Ubers or heading home to their families. But Sam? He leaned in close, his breath warm against my ear, and asked, "You coming with me?" I didn't even hesitate. We left together, slipped into a cab, and ended up at his place. I remember the rush of it all, the thrill of doing something forbidden, the way my heart pounded as I crossed that invisible line. I told myself it was just one night, one mistake. I stayed for a couple of hours. I don't need to spell out what happened. By the time I got back home, it was late, and David was waiting for me. "You're back late," he said, his voice soft but curious. "Oh," I said, forcing a smile. The party ran long. Everyone was taking turns giving speeches and toasts for the boss. It was a whole thing. He believed me. Of course he believed me. David always believed me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed next to him, staring at the ceiling while he snored softly, completely oblivious to what I'd done. My chest felt tight, my stomach twisted in knots. But beneath all the guilt, there was something else, a sick kind of exhilaration. My heart was pounding, my mind racing. The risk, the danger, the sheer wrongness of it all. It was intoxicating. I knew I'd done something terrible, something that could ruin everything. But instead of stopping, I let that high pull me deeper. The next morning, I was texting Sam again. Our messages got bolder, less careful. I even started reminiscing about that night, savoring the memory like it was some kind of victory. And then it happened again. This time, Sam suggested we take a day off work. "Tell them you're sick," he said. "I'll do the same." He booked a room at a boutique hotel with a spa, and we spent the entire day there. It was reckless, stupid, and completely insane. But in the moment, it felt like I was alive in a way I hadn't been for years. When I got home that evening, David didn't suspect a thing. He asked how my day was, and I told him it was fine. "Just busy," I said, kissing his cheek like nothing had happened. He smiled, told me he was glad I was working hard, and went back to helping Julia with her puzzle. And just like that, the double life I swore I'd never have became my reality. Before you find out what happens next, please subscribe to the channel. My confidence was out of control. The more I indulged in my secret life with Sam, the more untouchable I felt. It was like I was living in my own little world, where I made the rules, and everyone else, David included, was just there to serve me. Looking back, I can't even remember the specifics of most of the fights I had with David during that time. They were small, stupid things blown way out of proportion, but I kept picking them. I wanted to win, to dominate, to remind him, and maybe myself, that I was in control. I felt like a queen, untouchable and entitled, demanding that everyone around me bow down to my needs. And David? He didn't fight back. He never did. But I could tell something had shifted in him. No, he didn't accuse me or confront me. That wasn't his style. But I think he started watching me more closely. He was piecing things together, bit by bit, analyzing me in that quiet, methodical way of his. At the time, I didn't care. I figured I had everything under control. Then came Julia's 5th birthday. We planned a party at the house. Family, a few close friends, the usual. David handled most of the prep like he always did, while I focused on decorations and making sure everything looked perfect. But even on what should have been a happy day, I couldn't help myself. I don't even remember what sparked it, but I lost my temper with David. Twice. Both times, I waited until we were out of earshot of the guests before I let loose on him. Maybe it was about the cake, or the way he set up the table. It doesn't even matter. What matters is that I let my frustration and bitterness boil over in ways I couldn't take back. And David? He just stood there, calm as ever, taking it, apologizing when he hadn't even done anything wrong. The party itself went off without a hitch. Julia was thrilled, the guests had fun, and everyone left with smiles on their faces. But later that night, I noticed something different about David. He was quiet, Not in his usual reserved way, but in a way that felt heavy, like there was a weight pressing down on him that he didn't want to talk about. His smiles were forced, his laughter hollow. He wasn't fine, and deep down, I knew it. But I didn't want to know it. I didn't want to deal with the consequences of my actions or the fallout of our crumbling relationship. So, I ignored it. The very next week, I was with Sam again. Another long lunch turned into hours of stolen moments, this time at his apartment. We laughed, we talked, well, you get the idea. And as I walked back into the house that evening, greeted by the sight of David helping Julia with her homework, I didn't feel guilty. Not anymore. I felt invincible. Something shifted in the weeks that followed. I couldn't put my finger on it, but David, he felt different. He wasn't acting out of character, not exactly. He was still calm, steady, composed. But something beneath the surface had changed. It was subtle at first, a glint in his eyes, a quiet firmness in his tone. It wasn't anger, not yet, but it wasn't the easygoing David I was used to either. And I felt a rush from it. Finally, I thought. Finally, he's showing some fire. I don't know why I wanted to push him. Maybe it was the thrill of testing his limits, or maybe I just wanted to feel something, anything to shake up the routine. Whatever the reason, I leaned into it. And then came the day that was briefly described at the beginning of this story. It was a Saturday, just after noon. David had taken Julia to my mom's. When he got back, I could tell something was weighing on him. He looked tired, like he hadn't slept in days. "We need to talk," he said, his voice low but firm. I couldn't help myself. I rolled my eyes and shot back. "I don't feel like talking. I'm not in the mood to sit here and listen to you drone on about nothing." But this time, he didn't back down. "No, Rita. We need to talk. Now." There was something in his tone that caught me off guard, but instead of backing down, I leaned into the tension. "Fine," I snapped. "What is it? What's so damn important that you have to ruin my Saturday?" He took a deep breath, his hands gripping the back of a chair as he stared at me. "I've been trying, Rita. I've been trying to make this marriage work. But you've changed. You're distant, cold. You pick fights over nothing. You act like I'm not even here half the time. What's going on?" That was it. The match to the gasoline. "Oh, don't you dare turn this on me," I shouted, my voice rising. "You're the one who's boring, David. You're the one who's always so calm, so predictable, so dull. You're nothing but a second choice, a backup plan. I married you because it was easy, not because I wanted to. And this life, this stupid, boring, routine life, I hate it. I hate you. There's no passion, no excitement. I don't even know why I'm still here." The words flew out of my mouth before I could stop them, and as soon as they did, the air in the room shifted. David's face went still, calm in a way that scared me. He didn't yell or lash out. Instead, he walked over to the dining table, dropped his duffel bag onto it with a loud thud, and pulled out a stack of papers. "Fine," he said, his voice low and steady but laced with anger. "Then let's move forward, but not the way you think. Here." He shoved the papers toward me. "Divorce. I can't keep living like this, with a woman who ignores her husband, picks fights, and does—" He paused, taking a deep breath, his fists clenching at his sides. "Does things I won't even bring up right now because I'll lose my self-control." I stared at the papers, my heart racing. My confidence crumbled in an instant. This wasn't how the game was supposed to go. "David, wait," I stammered, reaching for him, but he was already moving. He grabbed a few clothes, stuffed them into his bag, and headed for the door. He turned back one last time, his voice sharp and final. "We'll talk later, Rita, with lawyers present, but for now, don't wait for me. I'm done." And just like that, he was gone. The door slammed shut, and I stood there, frozen, staring at the papers in my hands. My chest felt tight, my vision blurred with tears. I tried calling him, texting him, anything to get a response, but nothing. At first, I thought it was what I'd said, that stupid, cruel comment about him being my second choice. But as I sat there, piecing it together, something else dawned on me. The papers weren't fresh. They weren't printed on a whim. They'd been prepared in advance. David had been planning this. He knew. But how much? How much did he know? The rest of that day was a blur. I couldn't stop crying, pacing the house with my mind spinning out of control. Every room felt too small, every silence too loud. I was desperate to calm down, to ground myself, but nothing worked. Eventually, I called Amanda, one of my closest friends. I didn't go into details. I couldn't bring myself to admit what was happening, but I told her enough for her to understand that I needed comfort. "Oh, honey," she said, her voice soft and warm, like a blanket I wanted to crawl under. "I'm so sorry. You're going to get through this, okay? You're strong, and you'll figure it out. Just breathe." Her words helped, if only for a moment. By the time 9 p.m. rolled around, I wasn't exactly calm, but I wasn't on the verge of breaking down anymore. I sat on the couch, staring at my phone, and without even thinking, I dialed Sam. I didn't know what I was expecting. Maybe I thought he'd reassure me, tell me it wasn't as bad as it seemed, or maybe I just wanted to hear a voice that wasn't in my head. The first call went to voicemail. So did the second. By the third, I was practically shaking. I called again, and this time, he picked up. "Hello?" His voice was shaky, weak, like he'd just run a mile, or been hit by a truck. "Sam?" I said, my stomach twisting. "What's going on? Why weren't you answering?" There was a long pause. I could hear him breathing, but it wasn't steady. It was uneven, trembling. "Rita, I can't really talk right now," he finally said, his voice nasal, like he was stuffed up or crying. "What do you mean? What's wrong?" Another pause. Then the words that made my blood run cold. "I had a conversation with your husband." The phone almost slipped from my hand. "What?" I barely managed to whisper. Sam let out a shaky laugh, but it wasn't the kind of laugh I was used to from him. "Yeah, David knows, Rita. He knows about us." I couldn't breathe. My chest tightened, my pulse pounded in my ears. "What are you talking about?" "He showed me the screenshots," Sam said quickly, his words tumbling over each other. "The texts, Rita. The ones he has them. And let me tell you, he's not the guy I thought he was." "What do you mean?" "I mean," Sam said, his voice breaking, "I'm sitting here with an ice pack on my nose because your husband paid me a visit. And let's just say, it wasn't friendly." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. David? My David? The calm, patient, composed man who never raised his voice? I'd lived with him for years, and this side of him was like meeting a stranger. Sam continued, his voice more panicked now. "Look, I'm sorry, Rita, but I can't do this anymore. I'm out. I'm done. I'm not getting in the middle of whatever's going on between you two. David's scary, and I don't want to mess with him again. So this thing between us? It's over." Before I could respond, the line went dead. I sat there, stunned. The pieces started falling into place. David had known. For how long, I couldn't be sure, but he'd been planning this. The divorce papers, his behavior, the quiet intensity in his eyes. It all made sense now. That night, the full weight of everything hit me. My marriage was over. My affair was over. My carefully constructed house of lies had crumbled in a single day. The weeks that followed were a haze. Julia stayed with my mom to shield her from the mess I'd created, and I spent my days trying to reach David, texting, calling, anything to get a response. But he ignored me completely. Eventually, the silence broke, but not in the way I wanted. A meeting was scheduled, but not for reconciliation. It was with lawyers to discuss the terms of our divorce, finances, property, custody arrangements for Julia. When the day came, I dressed carefully, my heart pounding as I walked into the office. I had no idea what I was going to say, but I knew one thing. I wasn't ready to let him go. I wasn't just here to discuss terms. I was here to try to win him back. The room was cold, both in temperature and atmosphere. The table felt too big, the silence too heavy as I sat across from David and the lawyers. My heart was pounding, my palms sweaty, but all I could focus on was him. He looked so composed, so unshaken, while I felt like I was coming apart at the seams. The second we sat down, I couldn't help myself. I ignored the lawyers, leaned forward, and spoke directly to him. "David," I began, my voice trembling. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Please, just please hear me out." He didn't look at me, his eyes fixed on the papers in front of him, but I kept going. "I know I've been a terrible wife. I know I hurt you in ways I can't take back, but I was lost. I wasn't thinking clearly. I've made so many mistakes, and I need help. I need therapy. Please, David, you have to believe me. I respect you. I admire you, and I love you." Finally, he raised his eyes to meet mine, but there was no warmth there, just cold, steely resolve. "Rita," he said firmly, cutting me off. "That's enough. I'm not interested. I know everything, and I don't want to hear your excuses or apologies. I gave you every chance to explain yourself, to tell me the truth. But what did I get in return? An argument, a tantrum, and your lovely little line about me being your second choice, your backup plan. So, no, we're done." I opened my mouth to speak, but he held up his hand to stop me. His voice dropped lower, sharper, each word cutting like a knife. "And don't even think about trying to twist this around or pull anything. Because if you do, Rita, I'll make sure everyone at your precious job knows about you and Sam. I have the proof, and I'm not afraid to use it. But I'm giving you a chance to leave this with some dignity. You won't get me back, but at least you won't lose your job." My breath hitched. For the first time in our entire relationship, I was scared of David. Not because he was yelling or angry. He wasn't. He was calm, cold, and calculating in a way I never imagined possible. This wasn't the man I'd taken for granted, the man I'd dismissed as weak or boring. This was someone else entirely, and I realized with a sinking feeling that I was the one who had brought him to this point. I nodded silently, unable to argue. For the first time, I truly understood that I'd lost him, and there was no undoing it. The rest of the meeting was a blur. The lawyers talked numbers and assets, hammering out the details while I sat in stunned silence. In the end, it was a fair deal. David took most of the finances, but the house was mine, and Julia would live with me. We agreed on joint custody, which meant I'd still see him every week, a bittersweet reminder of everything I'd destroyed. When it was over, he stood up, gathered his papers, and looked at me one last time. "Good luck, Rita," he said simply before walking out the door. And just like that, he was gone. The weeks that followed felt like living in a fog. Julia stayed with me, of course, but the house felt empty without David. I went through the motions, working, parenting, keeping up appearances, but inside, I was a wreck. I started seeing a therapist, something I should have done long ago. At first, it was just to cope with the divorce, to make sense of the whirlwind I'd created. But as the sessions went on, I began to dig deeper, to unpack everything that had led me here. The chaos I'd craved, the risks I'd taken, the selfishness that had blinded me to the good man right in front of me. Writing this story was part of that process. My therapist suggested it as a way to step outside myself, to see my life from a new perspective. And now, looking back on everything, I can finally see the truth. I ruined the best thing that ever happened to me. David didn't just leave me because of what I said that day, though that was the final straw. He left because I broke his trust, his spirit, and his heart. And no matter how much I regret it, no matter how much I wish I could go back and do things differently, I can't. All I can do now is learn from it, for Julia, for myself, and for whatever comes next. Life is slowly piecing itself back together. David visits Julia regularly. He's an amazing father, and she lights up every time she sees him. With me, though, he keeps his distance. He's polite, but cold, like he's speaking to a stranger. I watch him sometimes when he's here, laughing with Julia or helping her with homework, and I can't help but imagine what it would be like if things were different. I dream about him coming back, sweeping me into his arms, whispering that he still loves me and carrying me to our bedroom. Sometimes I even catch myself wishing we could have had another child, a son. I can almost see him holding a baby boy in his arms, the three of us together again. But those are just fantasies, dreams that will never come true. I used to see David's kindness and dependability as weakness, but now I know how wrong I was. Those were his greatest strengths, and I was too blind to see it. Women like me, we get caught up in our emotions, chasing excitement and drama, and we lose sight of what really matters. I lost sight of him, of us. And now, all I can do is live with the consequences. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to the channel. I wish you a great mood and good luck.